My wife wanted our daughter to be a cheerleader. Instead, she became obsessed with Gothic horror. Now, my wife's meltdown is tearing our family apart. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter. My wife is 31. In high school, my wife was a popular girl stereotype. Pink, blonde, chunky highlights in her brown hair. This was the mid-late 2000s. She was on the cheerleading team, had lots of friends and boyfriends, was well-known and liked. She was basically the living embodiment of the picture-perfect girl from those cheesy 2000s high school movies. And then she got pregnant. When she was 15, she had her daughter. She doesn't know who the father is, and any potential fathers for the girl up and left way back when. Her daughter is recently 16. I never wanted kids. I found them annoying. But I fell in love with my wife and got married when she was 20 and I was 23 after dating for 2 years. We hit it off, and I married her and decided to suck it up around the kid. I never planned to absolutely love being a dad to her specifically. Kids still annoy me, but my daughter, stepdaughter technically, was different. She was quiet, nerdy even at a young age. I married her mother when she was 5 and we clicked right away. We went on daddy-daughter dates every weekend. I played dolls with her, let her paint my nails and do makeup on me. I drove her to and from school in my cop car. We even did daddy-daughter duo costumes for Halloween. Over the past 2 years, she's developed a darker dress style. I don't know what the proper subculture of her outfits are, but according to her, she's dressing like a horror game protagonist and a Monster High character. Purple is her main color she incorporates into this specific aesthetic blend, as she calls it. I don't get it, but maybe that's because I'm a man in my 30s. I don't know. She likes ghosts, tarot cards, vampires, zombies, aliens, creepy Victorian dolls. I don't get it. But also I don't care, because if it makes her happy, so what? She's also an introvert, and prefers to play games on her computer or read fantasy occult novels rather than hang out with other teens her age. She has friends, so I'm not too worried about her being completely withdrawn. I'm just glad I don't have to drive her around since she only has a learner's permit currently. My wife hates this. My wife always wanted a girly girl, pinks and pastels and flowers and all that. She wants our daughter to get a boyfriend, be more social, be a cheerleader like she was, which in itself is valid. I get it. I'm sure most every parent has preferences for what they want their kid to turn out like, and some disappointment when they stray from that fantasy is valid. Some. My wife will constantly takes and hides my daughter's darker room decor. She constantly gets pastel dresses for our daughter, tells her to wipe off her dark eye makeup, tries to set her up on dates with jock types from my daughter's school, and convince her to sign up for both school and summer activities like cheerleading or volleyball. I could have put up with all of that. I really could have. But a few weeks ago, I woke up to my wife finally hitting her breaking point. I woke up in the middle of the night to my wife screaming and having what I can confidently describe as a borderline meltdown. She was crying and saying all she ever wanted was a normal daughter who likes pink and is a cheerleader and has a boyfriend and will give her grandkids. I had to drag her out the hallway after 30 minutes of this. I kept thinking it would stop, but it kept going on and on. My daughter was just staring at this whole thing in the doorway of her room. What caused this meltdown from my wife? My daughter dyed purple over the blonde streaks, highlights my wife had forced her to get in her hair, which wasn't even breaking a house rule, as my wife and I have both told her she can do whatever she wants with her hair as long as she doesn't stain too many towels. It's been weeks, and my daughter won't talk to her mom. My wife is still up with her antics, but now it's in overdrive. Every day she brings home some type of trendy clothing in pink or pastels and tries to give it to my daughter. My daughter is getting fed up and stays in her room all day, and has confessed to me she can't wait for school to start back up in a few weeks, so she can get out the house and be with her friends again. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to side with anyone in this situation. I understand my wife wants a daughter who she can relate, and my daughter wants a mom who understands her. I don't know what I can or should do. I need help. I need advice. Update 1. It's been about a week since I last posted about how my wife was having a meltdown over how my daughter chose to dress. 2 nights after I posted, I sat my wife down and very bluntly asked her what exactly the problem was. She kept saying she just wanted a daughter who was similar to her, but after I kept asking, she broke down and admitted the real reason why she was having her meltdowns. My wife feels that her daughter is the only way for her to have more family in the future. She's estranged from her siblings, her parents don't speak much to her, and all of her friends from high school stopped talking to her after her pregnancy. She wants a family back, and she's hoping that her daughter will marry a nice boy and give her grandkids so she can have a family again. She said she never brought up having more kids with me because she figured I'd be against the idea. I don't know how I feel about having more kids with my wife, but it certainly won't happen now. So my wife is in therapy to try and get her to realize that she can't just view my daughter as a way to create a family. She's doing well so far, but it's too soon to really tell. My daughter is also in therapy. She's been in therapy since she was a kid for bullying issues, but now her therapist is trying to focus on the meltdown situation with her. My daughter actually seems relatively unaffected by this whole situation other than a little annoyed, so I don't know if that's good or not. I took my daughter to Hot Topic for some back-to-school accessories and then took her out to eat, just the two of us. She's still excited to go back to school. She misses her friends and her clubs. Yep, my wife and daughter have started talking normally again. They had a long talk, which I was present for, where my wife apologized for being so pushy and extreme with her wishes. My daughter was well receptive to this talk and seems to be back to her normal self. I am keeping an eye on both of them to be sure. My wife is doing her best to understand my daughter's interests. Last I know, the two were watching some slasher TV show on Hulu as a way to bond, and it appears to be working. There isn't any bad blood between the two. I know things are soon, and that things can change, but so far everything appears to be smoothing over pretty well. Thank you for all the advice, harsh and gentle, that I reviewed through my original post. It definitely slapped me in the face, as what could happen if I didn't get both of them help and make them talk it out. Update 2. It's been a few months since I last updated, and honestly, things have been a roller coaster. I thought we were making progress, but it turns out I might have spoken too soon. Initially, therapy seemed like it was working for both my wife and daughter. My wife was really trying. She was making an effort to understand my daughter's interests. They even had a phase where they were binge-watching horror movies together, and I thought, wow, this might actually work. But as time passed, I noticed something off with my wife. She was still fixated on my daughter's future, particularly the idea of her dating and eventually starting a family. It started small. My wife would casually bring up the idea of my daughter going to prom or getting involved in school activities where she could meet more people, especially boys. My daughter would brush it off, saying she wasn't interested, and my wife would drop it for the moment. But then my wife began to escalate things again, trying to set my daughter up with the sons of her friends or acquaintances. She'd invite them over for dinner without telling my daughter, putting her in these awkward situations where she had to endure a forced social interaction with someone she had zero interest in. My daughter was clearly uncomfortable with this, and she started retreating back into her room more often, avoiding these situations altogether. She'd still talk to me, but I could see that this was wearing her down. She even started skipping out on our usual daddy-daughter outings, saying she wasn't feeling up to it. That was a big red flag for me, because those outings were always something she looked forward to. I confronted my wife about it, and she insisted she was just trying to help our daughter be more social, to open her up to new experiences. But the truth was, she was still hung up on this idea of my daughter fitting into her vision of a perfect teenage life: pink dresses, school dances, boyfriends, and eventually, grandkids. Things hit a breaking point when my wife found out that my daughter had a secret Instagram account where she was posting her art, dark, Gothic drawings, and digital illustrations inspired by her favorite horror games. My wife was livid, not because of the content, but because my daughter hadn't told her about it. She accused my daughter of hiding things from her, and that led to a huge argument. My daughter screamed that she didn't want to share everything with her mom because she always felt judged, like nothing she did was ever good enough. She said she was tired of pretending to be someone she wasn't just to make her mom happy. After that, my daughter refused to speak to my wife at all. She barely came out of her room, only for meals, and even then, she'd take her food back to her room to eat alone. My wife was devastated, but I couldn't help but feel frustrated with her for pushing our daughter away again. That's when my wife dropped the bomb on me. She wanted to have another baby. She said that maybe if we had another child, she could finally have the daughter she always dreamed of, a girly girl who loved pink and all the things she did growing up. I was floored. I reminded her of what she had just put our daughter through and how unfair it would be to bring another child into the world just to fulfill her fantasy. I told her I wasn't interested in having another child, not after everything we'd been through. My wife was heartbroken and I felt guilty, but I knew it was the right decision. We couldn't just replace our daughter with a new and improved version that fit her mold. My daughter and I had a long talk after that. I told her how much I loved her, just the way she was, and that I was sorry she had to go through all of this. She told me she appreciated that I always had her back, but she was tired of feeling like she wasn't good enough for her mom, tired of the constant pressure to change. She said she was counting down the days until she turned 18 and could leave for college, where she could finally be herself without any expectations. It broke my heart to hear that, but I understood. I knew we had to do something to fix this, but I wasn't sure what. Therapy wasn't working anymore, at least not for my wife. She was stuck in this idea of who she wanted our daughter to be, and nothing was going to change that. I'm at a loss. I don't know how to help my wife move past this, and I don't know how to keep my daughter from feeling like she has to run away to be happy. All I know is that I need to do something before it's too late. Update 3. I never imagined things would get to this point. I honestly thought that, with enough time, we'd find a way to make this work as a family, but now I'm not sure we even have a family left to save. After my last update, things continued to spiral. My wife became more withdrawn, and it was like she was living in a different world, one where our daughter didn't exist. She stopped trying to engage with her altogether, and it was like she was giving up on being a mother to her. Meanwhile, my daughter was practically living as a ghost in our home. She'd leave for school early, come home late, and spend most of her time locked away in her room. The tension in the house was suffocating. One evening, I came home to find my wife sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of pamphlets in front of her, adoption agencies. She looked up at me with tear-streaked eyes and said she was serious about wanting another child. She said she'd been thinking about it for weeks and had decided that if I wasn't willing to have another baby, she'd pursue adoption on her own. She said she needed this, that it was the only way she could find happiness again. I was stunned. I asked her how she could even consider bringing another child into our lives when things were falling apart with our daughter. She just stared at me, as if she didn't even recognize the reality of our situation. She said she knew she'd never have the relationship she wanted with our daughter, and that maybe starting fresh with a new child would allow her to be the mother she always dreamed of being. I told her that wasn't fair, not to our daughter, and not to a potential new child. I told her that we needed to focus on fixing our family, not replacing it. But she didn't want to hear it. She said she'd already made up her mind, and if I wasn't on board, she'd do it on her own. That night, I had the hardest conversation of my life with my daughter. I told her about my wife's plans and that I was fighting against it, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. She asked me if her mom had really given up on her, and I didn't know what to say. How could I reassure her when I wasn't even sure myself? A few days later, my wife dropped another bombshell. She wanted a divorce. She said she couldn't keep living in a house where she felt so disconnected from her own child and husband. She said she needed to find herself again, and that meant starting over. She'd already consulted a lawyer and was ready to move forward with the process. She didn't want to fight over custody, as she admitted she wasn't the best mother to our daughter. She said she wanted to leave everything behind, including the life we'd built together. I was heartbroken, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. The constant tension and walking on eggshells in our home had taken its toll on all of us. Maybe this was the clean break we needed to start healing. The divorce process was quick and mostly amicable. My wife moved out, and my daughter and I stayed in the house. My wife didn't put up much of a fight when it came to custody. She agreed that our daughter should stay with me. She said she'd try to be a better mother from a distance, but I think we both knew that wasn't going to happen. My daughter took the news surprisingly well. She said she'd seen it coming and was just relieved it was finally happening. She's been more open with me lately, sharing her plans for college and talking about how she's looking forward to the future. She's even started going out with her friends more, which I think is a sign she's starting to find some peace. As for my wife, I've heard through mutual friends that she's already started the adoption process on her own. I don't know what will come of that, and honestly, I don't think it's my place to worry about it anymore. I just hope she finds what she's looking for, whatever that may be. In the end, it feels like we've all lost something. My daughter lost her mother, I lost my wife, and my wife lost the family she was desperately trying to recreate. But maybe, in that loss, we've also gained something. A chance to rebuild our lives in a way that's healthier and more honest. I'm doing my best to be the father my daughter needs, and I know we'll be okay. It's not the happy ending I envisioned when I first got married, but it's a new beginning, and that's all we can ask for right now.